In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Welcome to the Scarlets Supporters Pembrokeshire podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Westra is Best from the Scarlet Supporters Pembrokeshire with me, Lee G. Joining me as always is Big M. How are we, Martin?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. So before we crack on with the other stuff, how many bags of Haribo have you got to get through for the pod?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 bags, but just to put it into some context, they're not the big bags. They're the little multi-pack ones. My daughter had a birthday party yesterday, and I've got all the leftover sweetie corns. So I'm having a good day today.
That's always the way, though, isn't it? After a kid's birthday, and you spend the rest of the week eating like that pointless kids food. Like we had a space-themed birthday for one of our kids, and do you remember when you were small, you used to get little UFO things that were like paper planets.
The powder space.
Yeah, and they had like a sherbet
space
inside. That's the ones, yeah. So none of the kids had them. And there were loads, and that was like the whole of the rest of the week was just, you used to put them on your tongue and they'd melt, and you just had to kind of sit there going, until they melted. So I love all of that stuff. I should do more of that. Well, that's a bit wrong, wasn't it? I quite like 7-year-olds' birthday parties. Sounds wrong.
You gotta do what you enjoy, man. It's awesome. Like I'm not a fan of those sherbet saucer things, but everything else, like the amount of rainbow drops I got in these corns is unreal. I'm really gonna have some fun there.
Have you got squirty cream though? Rainbow drops and squirty cream when you kind of mix it all together. You've got to go squirty cream and then dump a load of rainbow tots on them. It's lovely.
I have never done that, but I'm very, very interested.
Got to be done, man.
That's my Tuesday night sorted now.
That's tea for tonight, then. Right, let's talk some rugby. Let's talk some rugby, mate. So we'll leave some Scarlet stuff till after, because there's actually, it was the last week of the season, effectively. Although officially, I think this weekend is the last week of the season. I think there's one game to be played, but last weekend was effectively wrapping up the season. So let's kick off then with the championship. So Narberth had a decent win again away at home against Trebanos, which we were expecting. We were expecting that. So there was no great shock there. And they did then overtake Cardiff Met and end up in 5th. So 78 points, that's a decent, respectable kind of position, especially seeing as how close they pushed Pontypool twice. Pontypool haven't lost all season, and Narberth pushed them really close both times. So, I think that's a good season for Narberth.
Yeah, we've said multiple times, it's the same finish as last season, but the improvements in Pontypool and Neath Bargoed, and especially Ystrad Rhondda, finishing in 5th is an improvement again for Narberth, just to say where they are. And it was the midweek game down in Ely against Glamorgan Wanderers. That's what secured them the 5th spot. So they really were able to go out and relax and have a bit of fun against Trebanos, and I think that's why there was such a heavy score and a few tries league. So 46-28. So entertaining game on the weekend. But you know, it all bodes well for the future. I mean, looking at the way the championship is being split, you know, Bargoed and Estradronda, the only two teams above them, they are obviously going to be in the East category. So, you know, Narberth have basically got everything to play for to win Championship West, however it's incarnated next season. So there is potential for Narberth to get into the Premiership, which I think would be outstanding.
Yeah, and I think when you look at most of those sides in that league, you know, most of them are east. There aren't many westerly. I mean, I suppose you could put Tata Steel, maybe, but
Tata, Talavera, Trabanos, Maestega really bordering. All the rest are all eastern teams.
yeah, I'd put my stake as east.
I'm just thinking of where the cut is and where they're going to have these teams with the 12 that are coming up. So, because they're going to have to pick 6 sides from this league to go into West. So, you know, it is figuring out where that is.
Yeah, I think that's the difficult bit for next year, isn't it? Because there are some sides in there that you'd go, how do you even come close to calling that West? Obviously Narberth West, but you know, you might get to a ridiculous stage where Cardiff Met is in the Western League. So yeah.
I'm imagining they're going to be saying somewhere along the lines of Bridgend is the halfway point, which is, you know, quite funny when you think about it.
Okay, so decent finish for Narberth. I think it was all in all through that season. I think there's been improvements, and like you say, there's been a couple of iffy games that you look at now and you go, you know, they finished in 5th, but really they lost to I think it was Bedwas, and I can't remember. I think it was Bellay as well. But sides below them that they really should have put away. But I think going forward, you know, Narberth is starting to bring through a couple of local players, local youngsters as well. So yeah, it's looking good. But, and this is always going to be the bit that's going to be a but for Narberth, is the structure of the ground, the physicality of the ground, that it doesn't work for them if they want to be at the top end. It's, you know, the pitches are great. You know, don't get me wrong. The 2 main pitches that they play on are fantastic. So your main pitch, training pitch, but there's no gym facilities there. There's the parking facilities aren't there. You know, it's got so much potential. And let's not forget, Narberth is a tiny little village. You know, it's not, you know, it's not a big, massive place or by any chalk of the imagination. So if they're serious about going and doing something better, then that's got to be the focus over the next couple of seasons. It's got to be, you know, how you develop a strong, and then how you fill that infrastructure with local people and local players coming to, you know, to want to play for Narberth. So
yeah, well, to be fair, I think we've committed to helping Narberth's car park, haven't we? That was one of our goals at the start of the season. But I think our current balance is £0 and 0 pence, so it's not going as well as we'd hoped.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that could Narberth has got so much potential for being, you know, an expert. And I think the way to do it, and this is just me thinking out loud, yeah, we've got the cricket pitch right next to it. Cricket pitch has got a massive tree right in the middle of it. If the either the cricket team or the rugby team have to relocate, and their ground gets taken by the other thing, and it makes more sense for the cricket team to relocate to a new ground just outside the town, which wouldn't be a massive stretch for them. and that would then allow the area that is now the cricket pitch, that could be the car park, and it could be the gym, and it could be an extended clubhouse. It could be so many things.
You've got some plans for you.
Well, no,
you need to get in this committee going, look, boys, this is what we need to do.
Well, it's the money, isn't it? And there are so many people in Narberth Cricket Club that are linked to to Narberth Rugby Club. The two kind of go hand in hand and always have. You do one in the summer, you do one in the winter, sort of a thing. So they've always been very close. But I think Narberth now, with all the changes that are going to go on over the next couple of seasons and the opportunities that are going to be there, they need to have that serious think about how do you get to the stage where you're competing on a level with the likes of Neath and Pontypool, because that's got to be the aim. That's got to be the aim of next couple of seasons. How do you get to that stage where you're actually competing in the top level? So that's my bit on Narberth. But don't take anything away from, I thought they've had a fantastic season, and they're doing really well. I would like to see them kick on and just take it to the next level. That's what I would like to see.
It's what we want for everybody, really.
Yes. Well, speaking of the next level, let's have a look at Division 1, which, finished. That you can't fault the finish to the season in Division 1. So Llangennech finished top on 99 points. Newcastle Emlyn on second, 90 points. Crymych third on 88 points. All three of them now get promoted. So that's three of the west sides to go into the Championship for next season. That is the structure, isn't it? They'll go up into Championship West. Am I right there? Yeah.
That is bang on as far as we currently know it.
Right. Okay. So we've then got, and I mean, in terms of the season, I thought Crymych were having by far and away the best season up until the last couple of weeks. And then the last couple of weeks, it all kind of went to pot. But then the last couple of weeks, they played Llangennech and Newcastle Emlyn, two teams above them. So, and again, Crymych, tiny little village, smaller than Narberth. It's only about 9 miles away from Narberth. So for them to turn it, no, it's got to be more than that. Must be about 10, 15 miles away. Anyway, for them as that tiny little village to be able to turn in a performance that is putting them, on the same level as Narberth next year is absolutely outstanding. When I was playing, Crymych didn't have a team. They were classed as a junior union team back then, if you can remember that. So Crymych and St Clair's were both classed.
I wasn't born then, mate. Sorry.
Well, back in the day, they used to be classed as a junior union side, so you used to have to play a couple of seasons against like second teams and what have you, to prove that you could fulfill fixtures and you could, you deserve to be in the league. So, Crymych is not an old club; it's quite a young club. So for them to be able to compete with the likes of Newcastle Emlyn and Llangennech and next season, to be in with the big boys is, full credit to the boys at Crymych. But same again with Crymych. So Crymych have extended their ground. They've extended their. So they used to just have the main training pitch to the side. They then bought the field behind the training pitch, and that's now kind of like the minis section and what have you. But it's the car parking, the car parking. If you're gonna try and attract a couple of hundred, 1,000 people to your ground, which has got to be your ambition. You know, you need to think about where are we going to put these cars, and that's the bit that I think Crummock are going to struggle with now, is because the ambition is there. You know, the ambition is definitely there, and rightly so. They've got some good players coming through. They have got a good system through the junior ranks. So it's the physicality of that ground and how that goes forward now over the next couple of seasons. But
this is turning into everybody needs a bloody car park.
Well, it's one of those things you've got to think of. You know, you do have to think of, if you're going to play at the bigger levels, you have to think of, you know, how are you going to, you know, how are you going to manage the clubhouse? How are you going to, it's things like toilets, it's car parking, it's facilities, it's, you know, so Crummock have just put in a gym a couple of seasons ago and stuff like that. You know, where's your training ground, where's your physio rooms and all this? And I think so many of the older clubs are now struggling because the game has changed so much, and they've got facilities that are quite old and quite kind of rigid. And changing them takes a lot of money. And as we all know, the money just isn't in the game at the minute. So anyway, looking down the table then, we've got Aberystwyth in 6th position on 61 points. So they were a 10 and 10 season. Yeah, it was. It's not a winning season. It's not a losing season. Won 10, lost 10, drew 2. So I think they'll be quite disappointed, to be honest, to be there.
Yes, some of the results Aberystwyth put out, they are more than capable of hanging around that top 3 bunch. It's just they've just fallen away and had some silly losses and just haven't performed on occasion, which obviously is disappointing for the club. But hoping those sort of issues they can manage in the off season and try and have a good run next year and potentially be in with a shout of either promotion or winning the league, because that is where they are at with this mass promotion going around everywhere. Finishing 6th means that puts you in top 3 next year automatically. So it is going to be really interesting going forward for Aberystwyth, because they're more than capable of being the best of the rest, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, particularly given their geographical location, where they've got the university, and there's not a lot of stuff around Aberystwyth. The closest club is Aberavon. So, they could be and should be drawing in lots of people from further out wide and just going, right, okay, we're going to be, the beacon in the West or in the Midwest. We're going to be the ones that you all want to come to. We're going to be the team you want to see play. So, yeah, I think they've got a lot of potential, particularly with the university players. But it would be nice to see them turn that in consistently. So talking of consistent, we've got Whitland 2 off the bottom. So they've won 3 games this season and they finished on 11 points. And then we've got Pembroke at the bottom of the table.
The most consistent team all year.
Yeah, lost 22. So let's do Whitland first. I mean, Whitland used to be one of the powerhouses. Yeah. And I think the growth of St. Clair's and Larne has kind of come at the cost of Whitland. I think a lot of players that previously might have migrated to Whitland have stayed where they were. 2-3 seasons ago, Whitland-Narberth was the Boxing Day clash. And quite often, Whitland would come out on top in that game. So I think now that Narberth have kind of gone on and kicked on, I think the players that might have gone to Whitland have now either gone Narberth or they've gone St. Clair's and Larne coming up. And I think that's, that's how I'm reading the situation. I might be a complete mile off, but I certainly think from where Whitland used to be, they're just not there now. They're just not there, and I think this is the new normal now for Whitland. I genuinely do.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope that there's some form of way back, and this is just one massive blip of a season, because it will be really strange not seeing Whitland in the top end of the leagues. It is quite weird, seeing them in the bottom half of Division 1. So it's not a good thing for the club, obviously, but other clubs are coming to the forefront. So you're looking at how do we balance it? Let's say 2 or 3 clubs start doing really well, but one has to suffer. It's always those sort of balancing acts that you find in every sport that go through the leagues. Teams rise, teams fall. Let's just hope Whitland don't fall too far.
Well, the irony of that is that when Whitland were all singing and dancing, they did exactly the stuff that I suggested for Narberth and Crymych. Their stand is superb, and it's got a gym built in underneath. Pitch is excellent. It's got a nice big car park. They've got training facilities away from the ground. So, they have done the bits that you need to do to kind of grow the club. But like I say, I think they've been hammered with the likes of Crymych would have pulled players, St Clair's would have pulled players, Narberth would have pulled players. So, yeah, it's we shall keep an eye on that one. But I can't see Whitland regaining that Tower of the West kind of title that they've had for quite a long time. And then we got Pembroke propping up the bottom there on -16. So we'll talk about -16 in a minute. But Pembroke got to Division 1 by going. They won Division 3 unbeaten. They won Division 2. I think they lost one game when they won Division 2, and then they came straight up. So it was a rapid rise. And again, I think a lot of this was based on pulling players in from the likes of Narberth, likes of Tenby, even Haverfordwest. There were a couple of key players that were coming to Pembroke, and everything was all singing or dancing. And then COVID hit, and a couple of players retired, a couple of players went back to previous clubs. Players were struggling to, do the away travel. That when you're playing Division 3 and even Division 2, the away games aren't that bad. It's still quite local. But if you, Hendy, Gowerton, Aberystwyth, Plethley every week, those are hefty old. It's an hour and a half each trip, so it's a hefty old journey, and I think players just got kind of, I don't know, a bit kind of fed up with it. In all honesty, so it's a massive rebuilding program for Pembroke, and it has to come from them.
Yeah, it's not just a couple hours in the afternoon like you would have a home game. That is excessive travel, and it is one of the stark realities that you have to face if you're in Pembrokeshire, because what a dozen clubs in Pembrokeshire, and then literally everyone else is elsewhere in the country, and they're all clustered. So I mean, I can go probably 7 miles either side of me, and we're talking a dozen clubs within that. So it's a massive difference between even Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire, and even worse going up into Ceredigion. But it's not something you will see again. But the -16, that's hurtful.
Yeah, it is, and so that's, I think you get deducted 4 points for every game you don't play, don't you? So I don't
think it's every game. I think you get it for whatever reasons. Like if you have like a genuine reason or whatever, I think it's when you don't make an attempt to rearrange
Yeah.
or whatever it is.
Well, when you look at that league, the bottom 5 teams have all had points deducted. This is Division 1, and 5 teams have had points deducted. I mean, something there has got to say that something isn't working. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe it is the travel.
Maybe it is, but then I remember when I was playing quite a few years ago. We played against the likes of Gowerton, Gorsino, Aberystwyth back then. Played against Narberth in friendlies or whatever. But we were playing against these teams. We were travelling up and down Wales and all that kind of stuff. So it may be it's a thing over a period of time that this has just worn clubs down. Where I think COVID has hit people and we haven't quite got supporters back through the gate. I haven't been to see Pembroke play since COVID, and it's literally, I can see the training pitch from my back garden. I can see the training pitch now. So, it's not like a massive effort for me to go and see Pembroke play. I just don't want to, It's and I think that's the challenge. That a lot. I'll go and I might watch kind of 10, 15 minutes. I stopped in one day when I was walking past. I watched 10, 15 minutes of a game, and it wasn't a great day. It was quite rainy and what have you. And I just went, I'm going to stand here for a thing and watch them get a kick in, So, yeah, I don't know if I'm the same as everyone else, but we need to do something to re-engage people with going to watch local rugby. I think that's what we need to do, and I think there needs to be a change of marketing, a change of support, a change of emphasis on that local rugby that says this is what we're going to do. So maybe that's something that we need to do in future episodes, and we just have a look at how do you solve this. I know I know in my head what I do, but it's trying to get that through to people that this is what could happen, and then there's the reality of actually this is what we've done in the past, and this has worked, and this is what and you need people to do it. You need a lot of people. You need a lot of volunteers to make these clubs work nowadays. And I don't think those people are there either. So, but we'll save that one for another pod, mate. Another pod, another day.
That's a lot of pods we've got saved up now.
I'm relying on you to tell me what pods we've got saved, mate, because it's I lose track now. I just sit there and I go, yeah, we'll talk about that on another pod another day, and I hope that you remind me at some point. So anyway, yeah, Pembroke, crap season. If things can only get better, but it has to come from within for them, for me. So Division 2, this is where it gets a bit more positive in Division 2, I think.
Yeah, we got some results to go through for this one.
Go on, and you take us through the results from last weekend.
Well, there was only 2 games that we really were, involved in. And that was, first one was Fishguard at home to Buryport. And then the big one, Nantgaredig against Tenby. And, Buryport, Nantgaredig and Tenby, they started the day all with the possibilities of going up. Now, Tenby had to beat Nantgaredig. Nantgaredig had to beat Tenby. So, in Nantgaredig, it was always going to be a hard game. But, Tenby managed to do it. They done it. They came out 28-21 on top. So, everything Tenby had to do in their own control, they did it magically. It was brilliant. All they needed to do then was hope the Fishguard could somehow hold out Buryport. And we've seen Fishguard through the season pull some magnificent performances out, had some really cracking results. but it just wasn't to be on this day. And Buryport ran out 35-12 winners, and Buryport were the magic team of the three that get promoted. But Tenby do finish in fourth place, which, again, with three teams being promoted, they're the best of the rest. They're champions-elect going into next season's 2 West, so to speak.
And that's got to be a bit gutting for you, when if you're Nantgaredig, last Saturday morning you started in 3rd place, and you finished last Saturday in 5th. And that's got to be a bit of a kick in, but full credit to everybody that played, because that's they played right up to the end of the season and gave everything right up to the end of the season. And again, in this league, there's only 2 sides have had points deducted, and one of them was Fishguard, and that was iffy at best. So maybe it is the distance of travel, the amount of supporters that you can get, that has kind of really created a good kind of atmosphere in this league. Tenby used to be in the same league as Whitland and Narberth. They used to be Division 1 teams. So for them to now almost be starting to go back up again is a good thing. But to miss out by 2 points is that's a good one.
This is so hard, and obviously we followed them all season. And if we look just at their win-loss, they've won 14 and they've lost 8. Now, in those 8 games, I can pick out 5 of them where there's less than a score in there. So 1 try or even just 1 penalty in those games would have resulted in them being promoted. It is that close. Like, they lost 3 points to Carmarthen Athletic at home. They lost 6 points to Buryport away, 1 point to Kidwelly away. Now, this is one big game where they really messed up, which we didn't expect at the time, was when they lost 20 points to 18 against Milford Haven. They put 1 penalty over in that game. That's an extra 3 match points, and they promoted. And again, away to Christ, losing 15-12. 5 games that they should have won 3 of them, definitely, if not all 5. So it is really heartbreaking when you've been following Tenby all season and you see some of these games.
But it is what it is, and fair play to them to think of it as a rebuilding kind of period. It's looking good for the future. I think they're going to be disappointed not to go back up, but yeah, in terms of how's the future looking, future's looking quite good. You'd be quite positive at the end of this season, looking at what comes next. Fishguard, on the other hand, that's it's always a difficult one with Fishguard, just in terms of recruiting players, holding on to players. They've lost a lot of young players to Crymych. Crymych have cherry-picked a couple of the better Fishguard players coming through. So, it's always, we spoke to Sush at the start of the season, and it was always going to be a slim squad. There isn't a lot of depth in the squad, but the players they had at the top end of that squad were top-notch players. I think they've announced 2 of their senior players have called it quits now at the end of the season as well. I forget who they were, but that just puts further pressure on them. Everybody's got to retire at some point, but I think the pressure on Fishguard for next season now is, how do you develop from within again, and how do you retain those players to really compete with the likes of Tenby at the top of that table? Because that's, the games against Tenby were close games. So I think Fishguard have got it in them they've got a good solid 15, maybe even a good solid 22, but it's that squad around the outside of it where, Tenby have probably got a squad of about 30, 33 of players who can interchange. So Fishguard are really kind of struggling down on 24, 25 players. And I think that's where they need to focus on for the future going forward and really boost that from within. But and this is the bit that Fishguard will suffer with, and Pembroke have always suffered with, is you'll develop players up until 18, and then there's very little to hold them in the area, and they'll get a job and they'll go elsewhere and they'll play somewhere else. And that's always been the struggle and will remain the struggle. So there's not much they can do about that, but it's about developing a steady stream of young players to come through that isn't quite there at the minute for Fishguard. So
all we need is some more jobs in the area to try and keep these boys around.
Essentially, yeah. But that's the way it's always been. Pembroke has always relied on boys coming down to work in refinery, and Fishguard always used to rely on boys coming down to work in the ferry terminals. That's how Fishguard used to attract players. So now with those both suffering, holding players in the area is really, really difficult. So it'll be interesting to see how they rebuild and how many young players they bring through from there. Because I know they've got young players ready to come through. It's whether or not those young players can come through in a way that kind of pushes on, or whether they can just, hold it for a couple of seasons before they push on. So interesting time next year for Fishguard. And then Milford Haven, one off the bottom. Now, we haven't really spoken much about Milford this year because they've been bottom or thereabouts for most of the season. But again, they're doing all the right things. They've suffered over the last couple of the years with a lot of the old employers in the area quitting. And I know they lost... In one season, they lost 4 junior coaches when Gulf closed. So, they've had knock after knock. So to even still be doing what they're doing well, sort of a thing. But they now need to kick on again and go up, because you can't be second from bottom and be happy with that from there.
Well, at least it's not bottom. That's all we can say. But again, Milford, they beat Tenby at home, so I know it's a derby, but they are capable. They have got boys there that can play. So it's just getting that consistency right, and hopefully we see something closer to mid-table or even the top echelons next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know they have got young players coming through. They took a couple of Pembroke players when things started going wrong. They've taken a couple of Haverfordwest players and whatever. So, I think the potential is there in Milford, but we shall see how that develops next season. So let's have a look down in 3 West. 3 West A.
3 West A, the Pembrokeshire League.
It does feel like it, with the exception of Lampeter and Aberaeron that are just bloody miles away. It does feel a bit Pembrokeshire-esque. So Lampeter won the division with 104 points. They only lost 1 game all season. St Clair's also promoted on 96 points in second. And when you look down, that's fair play to St Clair's. They've had a cracking season, and like I say, potentially at the expense of Whitland, but they have sucked in a lot of players. St Clair's, again, same as Crymych, were a junior junior league club or whatever it was called a couple of years ago. They're not an old club. They built this very much from scratch. So the St. Clair's pitch, what is now the St. Clair's pitch, used to be the school pitch in St. Clair's, and that is where I played my very first game of rugby. So I that was my my very first game ever on that St. Clair's pitch, and 3 tries in my first game. I remember that really, really well. As you would, wouldn't you?
You can see the 3 tries on your own. That's terrible, bit. Also, you just let him walk past. It sounds right from the back,
Well, if I tell you that one of the tries that I scored in my very first game was from a 5-yard scrum, but it was our ball on our own 5-yard line. So, and I had a telling off on my dad for celebrating before I'd scored on that one. So, but they've done well to even, build the club. And I think they've benefited, like I said, where the others have kind of got older structures and they literally started with nothing. Everything at St. Clair's has been built in the last 10 to 15 years. So the clubhouse, the changing rooms, the gym, the car park, everything there has been built from scratch over the last kind of 10, 15 years. And it's a really, really good setup. It really is good. So I expect them to actually do really well in Division 2. I think they will be at the top end of Division 2 next year. I don't see them struggling against some of those sides that are there, and I think they're going to go and shock a few people in that higher division again. So fair play to them.
Yeah, and we spoke about St. Clair's from the start of the season. They've got the coaching setup there. They have got some of the best coaches in the region. They've got some of the hub officers and the Scarlets, academy coaches working with their team. So they've got that quality there. So
yeah. So below St. Clair's, then we've got Aberaeron, then Larne, then Haverfordwest, then Neyland, then Cardigan, St. David's, Quinns, Langan, Llanybother, and Tregaron. And Tregaron propping up the bottom of the table. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy finish to the season with, people not fulfilling games and getting walkover points and what have you. So, the last couple of weeks, I think Pembroke Quinns have shipped 50 points 3 times in the last month. So it's been a bit of a crazy finish to the season. But if you were, let's say Haverfordwest, Haverfordwest, in theory, the main town in Pembrokeshire. And if you're Haverfordwest, then you're looking at the likes of Narberth and Tenby and, even St. Clair's. Haverfordwest should be putting those boys away comfortably. Just based on numbers, the amount of players, the system that they've got there, the facilities that they've got there is all set up. It's all, it's a good club. They've got good coaches. They've got a lot of people in the system. They've got the gym. They've got, fantastic ground with, everything is there for Haverfordwest to kick on. And for whatever reason, they haven't, and barring a couple of really, really good victories this year, it's been a patchy season for them.
Yeah, well, we spoke at the beginning of the season, and then I was back in Haverfordwest for the league, just based off the mini season from last year, and from day one, they lost their opening game, and it just. They recovered a bit, but they really haven't, climbed back to the sort of level they were at. So, again, they're in a situation where they're looking at best of the rest, and it's going to be interesting seeing how they fill this division up next season. Just because they're left with 10 teams. A 10-team division is, you're not playing that many games over the season. So it does baffle me a bit. I know why they've split 3 West because of the locations of the teams, but it's going to be an awkward one filling both the leagues up actually, and trying to make it work, because I don't see 10-team leagues working, especially community level. They won games week in, week out.
But then you look at how many games were delayed, how many games are postponed, and then how many games they had to finish at the end of the season. And you think actually it's a 10-game. I know 10 home games in a season puts pressure on you financially, but then also your outgoings are less, and you can just focus on these are the games you're more likely to fulfill those fixtures than in a 12 or a 14 team league. Do you know what I mean? It does just become a bit easier. And there were some sides that having to play, Bury Port had to play 3 games in 5 days, didn't they? At one point. So, there's a lot to be said for smaller leagues.
Yeah, but I think the biggest issue that every single club has, they haven't made a firm comment, but they've chirped in about, is the fact that they're not playing during internationals, like not at all, and that's 8 weeks. That's 8 rounds of fixtures that they could be playing in, whether it's on the Friday or earlier kickoffs on the Saturday or even on the Sunday, wherever. I think that's what they need to look at instead of condensing these leagues, because you condense them down and you might end up in the same scenario as we are by here, with Aberaeron being miles out and then having to travel long distances every game. And at these levels, you'd hope that you wouldn't have more than an hour's travel at most, and that'd be your furthest game. But again, being down here, down west, that's not always the easiest possible thing to logistically organize. So that is something that does need looking at, and it's just somehow making it streamlined so that these teams have an opportunity to go forward without being held back just because of the location.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying I think they need to look at the structure of how we play the game as a whole. How these sides should be massively integrated with the county under 15s, the Scarlets West, all of those sorts of things. So those teams should be playing at some of these grounds and kind of sharing some of the love around there. And there's nothing, through the international period and what have you. Yeah, you don't want to be playing at the same time as the Scarlets. If you're Pembroke Dock Quins, why can't you have fixtures that don't clash with Pembroke? So one of you is always at home. Yeah. And things like that. I know it's more difficult and it's not going to be perfect, but the more thought that is put into those kind of fixtures and those kind of games, that kind of way of approaching it, the more likely it will be that actually these sides thrive. It's some of these sides are scraping together to keep going. We know that times are hard and times are tough for some of these players, both in terms of recruiting players, how you bring players through from your junior section. And this is always going to be, the easiest thing to do is to not spend money on your junior section. And as sides have found out that have done that, that bites you on the backside pretty hard in a couple of years' time. It really does. And it's a hard battle to then re-establish a youth team or an under 16s or an under 14s or whatever it is, and then bring in players through into the first team. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do from the WIU. There's a lot of work to do from the clubs. But, all in all, I think, St Clair's could be happy with the season, and I think everybody else will look at that season. I think St David's have probably overperformed this year. I think they'll be quite happy with this season.
Hey, don't be saying that. This is the base now. they're going to go further. They're going to be competing for the title next season, man. Same as Langham.
I think St David's again, just a small little village on a very tip just before you fall into the sea. And fair play to them. They put a lot of effort into that club. That club is very much the heart of the town, or the village. A lot of stuff work around there. There's always events going on at the club, and it's always integrated into the town. It knows where it is. It's got its identity, and it's very much integrated into the town. Even though it's a little bit just outside, it pulls lots of people and lots of events to the club. And I think it's a lesson that can probably be learned by other clubs, that you don't sit back on your laurels and go, this is this. I've heard of a club, a rugby club, turning away birthday parties this year because it was on a Saturday night and they wanted to use the area for overflow to the home game. And you're like, well, no, actually, no. You've got your home supporters, put them in the club, and if somebody wants to use your club as a party venue on a Saturday night, then you put the two on. And it's because it brings people into the club. And actually, some of the people that go to that party on that Saturday night might have a chat with some of the people about playing, rugby, and they might go, oh yeah, my son's looking to play, or I fancy a game and all that. Do you know what I mean? That's how you integrate yourself into the club, into the town. But I just think we've lost that, and the one place that I know for definite that has got it is St David's, and they've worked really, really hard. So hats off to St David's this year. I think it'll be a really good. I think they've overperformed, but I think they might overperform next year as well. I genuinely do. So the side that I know have underperformed, the Quins. So I spoke to the Quins. I think it might have been the very first pod that we did. I spoke to the Quins. Young team, lots of younger players coming through. It's can you hold on to those players for another 2 seasons while they become senior players? And everything to do with Pembroke Dock Quins is about, can you hold the players in the area? And that's jobs, and that's money, and that's, Pembroke will be looking for players now. Tenby will be looking for players now. Can you hold on to that side long enough to develop them into a good side? And then propping up the Pembrokeshire lot is Langham, mate, our favourite.
Yeah, well, they've got a brilliant youth team coming through. So really, really hoping that all of those boys stay with the club for at least a couple of seasons, and that they integrate well into seniors, and they bring some of that millennium magic, into the club. And you can only see things getting better if that's the case. And it's like you said with a lot of clubs, it's being a small one in the area, historically players go elsewhere. It's just a case of trying to keep them, and having a good junior setup and minis and youth is the way to try and do that. And we all know Langham got the youth setup. It's just keeping these boys at the club. 3 wins out of a 22 game season is quite poor. So they're gonna want to improve on that. Even if it's a case of let's get 6 wins next season. Make a realist. You can put yourself up a target. Let's say we want to win all our home games, but you want to have your more realistic of let's say we want to win 6 games next season and see how we go.
And again, Langham is very much a part of the village, and it's starting to attract players from outside the village again, which is something it hasn't done for a long time. So the potential is there, and like you say, with the youth team as well, it may be the opportunity that they need to just kind of springboard forward. So fingers crossed for Langham for next season. That might be, it's going to be interesting to see how everything rejigs itself, how the league sits, and, is the community game starting late as well, or is the community game starting as normal and playing through the World Cup?
Well, I know that the Premiership is starting in September, so I would imagine everything else will be as well.
I can't see why the community game wouldn't continue through the World Cup. It makes sense for them to kind of go through the World Cup, doesn't it? It's one of those things. Right. Okay. So that's the community game done. And we got a couple of issues that will hang over for us to discuss through the summer. So let's talk Scarlets for a second. And I think our main problem with the Scarlets this week is there's nothing to discuss. Again, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm getting really, really disappointed. We're on Tuesday now. It's coming up to 1:00 lunchtime, and normally by 12:00, any news on the day would be out. And the fact that nothing's out again today is just so annoying. I mean, I know there's things being confirmed that are ready to be announced. They're just not being announced. And I want to tell the world, but, I really can't. Like, there's an interesting fixture, coming up in the middle of September for us. And just the thing with, getting our coaching team finalized and announced. So as far as I've been told, and I know that's all done and dusted behind the scenes. It's just a case of it just hasn't been announced. So it's just really irritating not having anything to go on. And this is the time of year where, things are normally done and dusted by now, and we forget about rugby. We can move on to the cricket season or the internationals in the summer, but we're still here talking about the club and what our coaching side is going to look like, what our actual squad is going to be made up of, because there's still X amount of signings to be made. So it's really frustrating that we're just hearing nothing constantly.
And it's weird because players get a good kind of chunk off through the summer. They disappear and, go and relax, go and have your 8 weeks break or whatever. But a lot of the coaching, a lot of the admin and all of those kind of things, it's not the same for them. They are still there. They are, prepping next season. They are, assessing what's what and doing their education side and what have you. So, yeah, it's not the excuse of, well, we're on holiday or whatever. It doesn't really fit with that. So, yeah, I'm a bit disappointed as well, knowing that there's stuff that should be announced, knowing that, we could be doing stuff, knowing that we could be interviewing players and discussing stuff with players and having a nice little chit chat through the summer. So, yeah, that's a bit disappointing for me that we haven't had the stuff that we were expecting. But then news is broken about, so this is yesterday, about Oil for Wales as well. So Oil for Wales suspending their involvement with the game, including their financial commitments. So obviously Maine's shirt sponsor, but they also do a lot with local clubs, particularly in the West. So,
yeah,
that's all WRU orientated. But what do you make of that, Matt?
Well, I've actually not recently, but a few years ago, I was looking for sponsorship I was coaching 7s, 8s, and I was looking for sponsorship for new kit because I was terrible. And Oil for Wales were the ones that came through with it. And obviously, Colin likes to handle those things himself. Colin, head of Oil for Wales, he likes to do all that stuff himself. He likes to talk to the people involved. And even then, he was saying that, they get inundated with sponsorship requests all the time. It's not even, one or two a day. It's dozens. And so obviously they can't help everyone. So I was just really thankful they helped us. But when I was speaking to him, one thing that he did say is that he doesn't mind helping out. He actually loves helping out. He loves being able to do it, just seeing the kids play and whatever. But facts are, most of his sponsorship requests are for things like balls and equipment and kits. And he was a bit pissed off then that the WRU were not given the support for these things. So, and that was like 2.5 years ago now. So imagine being pissed off at that point and now everything that has happened recently. And, it's no surprise that, they think they put in money into an endless hole essentially. And I can see it. Like, I'm glad that they've openly stated that any current commitments they are seeing through. So, there's no immediate worry. It's just, a lot of work for, backroom staff and whatever, especially at the Scarlets. But it is a case of it's WRU focused, issues. It's what can we really do? We can't do nothing. It's all down to those people in Cardiff, in bloody Hensall, wherever they are, and they just don't want to do anything really that benefits the game. It's like they give 4,000 a year to most of these community clubs, and then if you need extra money, you've got to go through all these grants processes. I mean,
you've got to go community grant, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to set up a minis or juniors, I mean, just to get one started, you're talking $1,000 per age grade just to get everything in and going. Your kit, your equipment, everything like that, and then it's probably a good few hundred, maybe even 500, depending on what you need a season to keep it running. And you're giving these teams $4,000 to run 10 mini junior sides, a youth side, and a senior side. It's not going to go that far. $4,000 barely. I don't even think $4,000 covers a bloody senior squad anymore, because the amount that everything costs is just stupid. Or there is no money being given by the union, and they have the money there to spend. They just don't want to spend it, which is the biggest frustration of all.
But I think I think so. There's 2 points with this. That this is what the WRU need to tell them to pull their finger out. They need the people with the money to say, right, the checkbook's closed and we're not doing anything until you do this, this, and this. And I think that's the only way that the WRU, some of the heat has come off the WRU the last couple of weeks, end of the season and what have you, and everyone's starting to think about World Cup and things like that. So that pressure has come off, and it's not in the headlines anymore. It's all kind of calmed down. So now you need the people with the money to say, right, okay, my money is still here, but I'm not doing anything with it until you sort your game out. And that maintains the pressure on the WRU. Because, that those are conversations that would have gone on behind the scenes, and the WRU would have been aware of that, and they would have been threatened with it, and they've done nothing. And he's gone, okay, well, I'll go public. I'll tell the world, because you're not doing what you need to do, boys. And I support him on it, actually. I do. I think, he's right as a sponsor to the game. He's right to say, that's my choice to put the money into the game. I'm not obligated to put my money into the game. I can go and do other things elsewhere with my money. So if you want my money, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do to, ease my money coming into the game. And the WRU then are in it, or clubs are in a position where they can go, okay, this is what we'll do. And the second part of this is, I think it's a wake-up call, and I've been saying this to clubs for such a long time. I'm banging my head against a brick wall that you cannot just be a rugby club anymore. That's your core. That's your main bit that you do, but you have to have other bits that go around the outside that bring money into the game. You could now, okay, with a very, very small setup now, You could set up your own YouTube channel, okay, where you could do podcasts and interviews like this through the week, and then you could broadcast your own game on your own YouTube channel at the end of each week. You know, you could broadcast that. You could broadcast your juniors, your minis, your youth. You could put all of that on your YouTube channel. People would watch. Yeah, people would watch. People who support your club would watch from far away or whatever. And that generates you advertising income from people that you have no idea. Yeah. But these things are all there for clubs to do stuff with. It just takes a couple of people who are within that club to go, right, this is, we need to do things differently now. And there aren't enough of those people in the club. And the reason there aren't enough people in this club is because they get fed up really quickly and they go, do you know what, I don't need to spend my time here. I'm going to go do this elsewhere, same as I've done. But do you know what, I'm going to go do other stuff within the rugby world. I don't need to come and put up with this week after week after week of banging my head against a brick wall to get you to see sense. So, you know, we need to really start thinking about the whole of rugby in Wales as one great big package, everything from under sevens, primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, through to academies, through to youth teams, through to, you know, second teams, senior teams, professional teams. There needs to be a coordinated plan that's got all of this stuff in, and everybody knows this is what I need to do, and this is how I can go forward. This is the support I'm going to get. This is what I like to do, and this is how I go forward. So, yeah, I think it's going to be one of those watershed seasons, and over the next couple of years, we'll see things really, really changing, and we'll see sides like St. Clair's just come from nowhere and, you know, get stuff right, go on and say to people, right, this is how you do it, guys. You know, we'll see sides like St. David's and Langham, who tiny little places, got no business having a rugby team whatsoever, actually starting to thrive because they're part of the community. So that's what I'm hoping is going to happen over the next couple of seasons. But something's got to change definitely on that. Anyway, that's I've gone on far too long about about what could and couldn't happen and all of that kind of stuff. So rather than carrying on droning on this week, Bart, because that's what it is. What we'll do is next week we'll do our kind of season review, and I think what would be good is if we could get a bit of input from other supporters. So what we're looking at for next year is player of the season and why. Our breakthrough player of the season and reasons behind it. I think the moment of the season, that one bit of the season where something happened that turned it, or you remember, or whatever. Most entertaining player of the season and most entertaining game of the season. So, I mean, there's so much there through this. It's been such an up and down. So, well, it's been a down and up season more than an up and down season. Yeah. But I think even in those down games, you know, there were moments in those games where we learned something about ourselves as a rugby team, as rugby players. So there's loads to talk about with that next week. So yeah, let's do that next week. We'll wrap up for today, and we'll put some stuff out on social media, and let's get your player of the season, your moment of the season, your breakthrough player, and your entertaining moment of the season. And that's what we'll discuss next week, mate, because there's no community game next week. Definitely no community game. We're all done with community game for next week. And we'll do our Scarlets review of the season next week. How's that sound?
It sounds a bit disappointing, if I'm honest, knowing that all rugby has officially come to an end. We had the Premiership final this weekend, Llandovery doing Cardiff over in Cardiff. Up at Rovers, come on. We had the European final, which was a cracking watch, in all fairness. And it's the URC final now this Saturday. So that this is literally the end of club rugby for the 22-23 season. And, there's a tear in my eye. I don't want it to end.
It's all those Haribos you've been eating, mate. The chemicals are doing something to your eyes.
I've only had one pack. I've been sacked there, and I didn't want to open them because you made a comment the first time I opened one saying that your headset almost exploded off your head.
And then you opened it right next to your mic. It was like a firework going off in my ear.
Sorry, man. I didn't know it was that close to him, man.
So hopefully you will have finished all of your Haribos before next week, and we'll catch up next week, mate, and we'll do the same thing all over again. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Great stuff. Hopefully we'll have a bit of news by then as well, although I'm not holding up much hope.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see for next week. Right, have a good week, and I shall catch up with you next week. All the best, Matt.
And you, Matt. All of it.
All the best.
You have been listening to the Westerer is Besterer podcast from the Scarlet Supporters Pems team. You can follow us on Twitter on Scarlet Pems. Find us on Facebook with Scarlet Supporters Pembrokeshire, or email us on scarletspems@gmail.com. And remember, West is best, but Westerer is Besterer. Cheers.
Sports Social Podcast Network.